Okay, so interestingly then, the new thing that's on everybody's tongue that nobody seems to know about, council tax. So at the moment, do we know who is liable for the council tax in a rented property? The tenant. Is that in all cases? Not in a HMO. What if a tenancy was 3 months? Would the tenant be responsible for the council tax? Do we all think yes? Because I did. I didn't think that the duration of the tenancy had any bearing on who was responsible for the council tax. But actually, if a tenancy agreement is less than 6 months, the landlord is responsible for the council tax in the eyes of the council tax regulations. So any landlords out there doing 3 months tenancies, 4 months tenancies, landlords could be deemed liable for that council tax. So in this case, what happened, these are the facts about this case that has brought this to the forefront of everybody's minds at the moment. A guy called Mr. Broadley was a buy-to-let landlord in Leeds, and he owned 5 properties which were all let on 6 to 12-month ASTs. So bearing in mind what I've just told you, that a tenant is liable for the council tax if a tenancy is for 6 months minimum. In this case, the tenants should all be responsible for the council tax. What happened was, all of the tenancies became rolling. Do we all know rolling contracts? SPT, yeah? That's what we call it, statutory periodic tenancies. When a fixed term ends and neither party has given notice, the tenancy goes on to a rolling contract. Do we all remember superstrike v Rodriguez, which was the big case about deposit regulations? Well, in that court case, if you all remember, what they decided was that when a tenancy became rolling, in effect, what we were creating was a whole new tenancy. Do you remember that? And that's why we had to register the deposit again, issue the prescribed information again, because those are the requirements when entering a new tenancy. Eventually, they ironed out all of those problems with the Deregulation Act, apart from one, which was the fact that they said every time a contract goes rolling into an SPT contract, it is still deemed a new tenancy. So that still stands. So if a contract goes rolling SPT and it's now month by month, how long is the duration of that contract? 1 month. So therefore, who's liable for the council tax? The landlord. So this is a big problem. This was a big problem, particularly for Mr. Broadley, who owned 5 properties, and Leeds Council was going after all 5 houses, and he wanted the council tax. Now, if you've got a tenant in there and the tenant's paying the council tax, I can guarantee you most certainly they're not going to say to the tenant, just to let you know, we're not going to charge you anymore, we're going to charge you landlord. But in this case, what happened, all of the tenants were on housing benefit. Do housing benefit applicants pay council tax? So are the council getting their council tax out of these 5 properties? Do you think that they thought to themselves, oh, I know what we can do. Well, we're not going to get it out of the tenants. They're now in new tenancies. What we'll do is get it off the landlord because he's rich. He'll pay us, and then we'll be getting our money. Because you know the councils are all about income, income, income. So that's exactly what they did. They went after Mr. Broadley for council tax on all 5 of his properties. Now, Mr. Broadley was very clever, and he perhaps should be stood here, because what he had done, within his AST, he'd put a provision in there that stated, after the expiry of the initial fixed term, so we've got the start date, the expiry date, he had a clause in there that just simply said, and becomes monthly periodic tenancies after the end of the fixed term. So it's quite a simple clause. It's not gone into statutory periodic. It's gone into a monthly rolling contract. But with that clause, what that done was saved him having to pay that council tax. However, it was quite a long journey. It didn't happen straight away. The council sought council tax from him under the 6-month rule for periods when the tenants had left but they had not formally ended the contractual periodic tenancy. But he had to go through the whole of this process to get to the point where they eventually couldn't charge him the council tax. So the facts of the argument were that the council claimed a tenancy couldn't be both fixed and periodic, and the agreement failed for uncertainty. The council also argued that the fixed term, a periodic tenancy, that the new periodic tenancy was again, you know, a new tenancy following the ruling in superstrike, as we've said. But this gentleman, he took it to the valuation tribunal. It was rejected. It then went to the High Court, which was rejected. The Leeds Council then appealed again. They were taking this all the way, because you imagine how many benefit tenants there are out there that they're not, pardon? And students where they are not getting council tax paid on their properties, and they're now thinking, this is great, we can get it off the landlords. So they did take it all the way. And the final Court of Appeal, they rejected it, and it was ruled that he wasn't liable for the council tax, but only because of that clause. So what should we learn from today? There's two things that we should learn from today, because we certainly learned from this. And immediately we went back to the office and we made amendments to our contract. Sally spoke to you earlier about thinking ahead of these regulation changes, these game changers. We also sat there and we thought, well, we've got tenancies that have been going on for ages. How are we going to get that clause in there now? Because it wasn't in there before. Every tenancy that we do now will be safe because it's a new tenancy and it will be in there. We made the changes about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. So any new tenancies will have it in there. But just think, when you guys, if you guys let your contracts go rolling, is that the right choice? Bearing this in mind. Should you maybe do a renewal of contract for a further fixed term, get that clause in there, and then next time you'll be safe? Because, okay, so the clause is just that the tenancy becomes monthly periodic tenancies after the end of the fixed term. There's further details than that. It is a little bit more detailed. There's another section that we've put in, which I'm happy to share with you all. You're all landlord clients of ours. It will be in the new contracts anyway. So if any of you want that, just drop me an email and I will send it to you. But it is important that you make sure that this is in there. Otherwise, you could find yourself, particularly if you rent to, as Sally said, students, housing benefit tenants, which I know some of us in here do, that you don't fall foul of this. It's quite interesting because not even the council have heard of this case. I've had several arguments with Wolverhampton Council because they don't know about this case, and when I tell them and when I send them some details, they're like, oh, okay, then we won't chase you. Because other problems that you find is when tenants vacate the properties prior to the end of the fixed term, but claim they're not responsible because they left 3 weeks before. It doesn't matter that my contract didn't end till then. I wasn't living there, I was living somewhere else. Because what they say is tenants can't pay council tax on 2 properties, but why should you as landlords then? I'm presuming you're all paying council tax on the properties you live in. So why should you have to pay more? Sally?
Just want to point out, talking to an agent in Halesowen, that Dudley Council is actively pursuing landlords in Dudley. So if you have any properties in Dudley, jump on this straight away. They're active in Dudley.
So they're only up the road then?
Basically, if you've got an SPT, get it renewed, get it recontracted now.
Again, what we're going to be doing within the management department, we are going to be running off a list of all of our contracts that are in rolling contracts, speaking to the landlords, speaking to the tenants and trying to tie them into another fixed term. Just to protect yourself, because this could become costly, especially if you've got more than one property.